Detroit, they charge into the NFC North arms race. That's what I call it every year, man. It's an arms race because the NFC North has some of the best teams in the league. And this division, each and every year, the last couple of seasons has, or at least 3 seasons, it's been getting better and better and better. And I think that last year's output really defined it. You know, you had everybody within 2 wins of each other. And I think that's kind of the tip of the spear of where we're starting this year. Who really deserved that record? Did the Bears really deserve the NFC North? No. And do they even have a chance at repeating? No, I don't believe so. But anyway, the Detroit Lions, they're charging in the NFC North this year. The arms race carrying the division's most explosive back, the best offensive tackle, the deepest receiver combination, and 2 nationally recognized top 10 safeties. The Lions still must convert individual dominance into connected football after the injuries, right? So when you're faced with adversity, you still have to connect that, to football, right? You still have to be able to play football. You have to get through it. The protection failures, the secondary instability, all that helped turn 2025 into a 9-win season of failure for most of us that felt that the Lions could have been and should have been into the playoffs and potentially could have done something. But the injuries started to mount once again, and the roster still remains powerful this year. I mean, there's enough to reclaim the North, in my opinion, and to go much, much, much further. But does it have enough to make that run to the Super Bowl is the question for you. What do you think? Does this roster currently as it sits give you that feeling that we have a chance? Every position ranking exposes another pressure point, and I think that all of those pressure points have to survive training camp, ultimately a 20 or a 21-game season, including the Super Bowl. And so where we're going to start first is ranking the division. Now, this is a DFJ Sports Index ranking, which measures the complete projected 2026 position group rather than simply copying last season's performance or an ESPN's rankings list. I do each group. I do it on a 100-point composite score, and it's based on this. You get 40% for elite starter ceiling, right? That's a national evaluator recognition, all the pro standing and game-changing ability that those players have. 30% goes into full starting lineup, the quality and reliability of every projected starter. 20% is going to the depth and the versatility, rotational value, the matchup flexibility, and the injury replacements that will happen throughout a season. And then 10%, and I went low on this because there's a lot of injuries around the league. There's a lot of injuries every year. But a 10% developmental trajectory, and then also it will also include an injury-weighted risk to it. But realistic growth based on the experience, the age, and the recent performance of last year's rookies into their second season. That is what the 10% is going to. And then I also factor in the injury risk. Health is evaluated separately, though, as availability risk. An injury can lower the probability that a player contributes immediately, but it does not erase his demonstrated ability for prior seasons. So the distinction is really critical because when you evaluate, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Micah Parsons, Sam Laporta, Tucker Kraft, all players that are battling injuries this year, that's why you have to, weight this a certain way or at least utilize some sort of an injury waiver risk to compile the composite score. So the NFC North position rankings, this is where it is for me. Overall, the position group, the Detroit Lions, they get the quarterback nod. They rank first with a composite score of 92. Chicago, I know, I said it. They rank second at 89. Green Bay, they're third at 86. Minnesota is fourth at 74. Running back, Detroit Lions are at 96. They rank first. Chicago is number 2. They rank 90. Green Bay, 84 in third. Minnesota, 78 in fourth. Wide receiver, guess who? Detroit once again. 95 composite score. Minnesota, number 2 at 92. Chicago falls to third at 84. And Green Bay all the way down to 80 in fourth place. Tight ends. Well, the script just flipped. This is where Chicago takes it. They're at 94. Detroit, 93. Green Bay, 89. Minnesota, 82. Now, I'm rattling off a bunch of numbers, and we're going to talk about what they mean. And I'll come back to some of this and review it again when we get towards the end. The offensive line, the Detroit Lions rank first with a composite score of 92. Chicago ranks second with a composite score of 89. And again, some of these will change. Like I said, some of these have been changed a little bit since I did my first edition. But for the most part, most of these won't change. Actually, let me hold on. Let me double check something real quick. Let me look at my other. Let's kick it up with offensive line. So offensive line, Lions ranked first. Interior defensive line, I know it's going to be crazy for me to say that. Lions rank first. Edge rusher, Lions rank first. And linebacker, Lions rank first. Cornerback, Chicago takes it. Safety, Detroit. Special teams, Detroit. Now, the thing with safety is I could easily give that to Chicago because they're healthier. I could give it to Green Bay because they're healthier. But when you compare, again, what ESPN did in putting those Bijan or putting Branch and Kirby Joseph in the top 10, I'm banking on the fact that these players are going to play, right? That's what I'm banking on. I'm banking on the fact that Kirby is putting out all these stupid dancing videos and all this other crap, and that he's actually going to be healthy, right? Because he's kind of teasing the fans, I guess. At least a lot of fans are taking it that he's totally healthy and he's going to play. And for the same respect at edge rusher, when I put the Lions at first, well, it's because of what I'm going to explain to you, but they're healthy. Parsons isn't. And that's why it's kind of conflicting for me, but there's a reason why, and I'll explain it in the guts of the article. All right, let's get into the overall, man, the meat and potatoes of all this. Overall composite, at the end of the day, I don't think any of this changed either, but I had the Lions, the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings, which is interesting. I have to look at my board that I put together and see if I had it the same. I might have back in the early parts of spring. All right, so let's get into the list. These are editorial composite scores, right? They're not official ESPN. They're not Fox. They're not PFF rankings. National positional surveys, performance analytics, and official team reporting has provided me enough information and the supporting evidence to be able to create this composite score. The Detroit Lions finished first because it leads the division at quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive line, interior defensive line, edge, linebacker, safety, and special teams. Pretty much the whole damn team, right? It's not even close. Chicago, they lead at tight end, cornerback, could lead at safety. Green Bay pushes Detroit hardest at edge, linebacker, and safety. And Minnesota's strongest arguments are receiver and maybe offensive tackle and cornerback, but they don't have a lot going on over there. Detroit owns the offense. We're going to start with quarterback, ranking the Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears, Minnesota Vikings, and the Green Bay Packers. Jared Goff owns the strongest combination of proven production, and I don't think anyone can shake a stick at that one. The recent consistency and the national evaluators support this argument. Goff finished 2025 with 4,564 passing yards, 34 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 105.5 passer rating. He ranks second in passing yards, second in touchdowns, and third in passer rating while operating behind an offensive line that finished 31st in pass block win rate. Detroit still ranked fourth in scoring and fifth in total offense. ESPN survey of more than 70 NFL executives, coaches, scouts, all ranked Goff ninth among the NFL quarterbacks. Caleb Williams finished 10th, not sure how, while Jordan Love received honorable mention, and that places Goff first in the division based on both production and the league-wide evaluation. Caleb Williams, he gives Chicago the greatest mobility and improv, if you will, upside versus anyone really in the division. He threw for 3,942 yards, yet again shy of that 4,000 yard mark that has evaded Chicago. He had 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but he only completed 58.1% of his passes and recorded a 90.1 rating. Love Love was more efficient at 66.3%, 23 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and a 101.2 rating. But he also produced nearly 1,200 fewer passing yards than Jared Goff. Minnesota enters camp with Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy competing for the job, so both of those really don't matter. Why Detroit ranks first? It's simple. Goff owns the best recent combination of volume, efficiency, decision-making, and system command. Agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Where would you rank the tiers of the quarterbacks in the NFC North? All right, for running back. Again, I don't think this one's close either. Even with the loss of David Montgomery, I still feel the Lions, well, they have the best running back in the division. Do they have the best room in the division? And I think that there's a very valid argument to answer yes to both of those. And we'll see where Monangai bounces back this year, and if he's able to have this very similar style of a season that he did to last season in supporting Swift. But we're going to start right away with Jahmyr Gibbs, man. He gives Detroit the division's largest mismatch from the backfield. Gibbs produced 1,223 rushing yards at 5 yards per attempt. He caught 77 passes for 616 yards and scored 18 touchdowns. His 49 touchdowns through 3 seasons are the most by any player through his first 3 years in NFL history. That's right. That is an NFL record. ESPN's Evaluator survey ranked him second among all NFL running backs, behind only Bijan Robinson, and that is a very big mistake, in my opinion. Detroit also added Isaiah Pacheco to handle the physical runs, the pass protection, and the complementary workload. Pacheco's production has declined since suffering a fractured fibula in 2024, but his early career combination of power, speed, and 4.7 yards per attempt gives the Lions a proven second back ceiling. He's also 100% healthy for the first time in his career since suffering that injury, and that is something that I feel is going to weigh very heavily on his production this season. Chicago, they ranked second because of DeAndre Swift. He ran for 1,087 yards and 9 touchdowns last season, while his running partner, Kyle Monangai, also surpassed 750 yards. The Bears were the NFL's only team with 2 backs above that threshold and finished third with 2,456 rushing yards. It was a down year for David Montgomery, who also saw about 90 to 100 touches less than he did the year before. Josh Jacobs keeps Green Bay competitive, but the Packers have greater durability and depth concerns behind him. Minnesota has useful options in Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones, but neither creates that receiving and explosive play stress that Jahmyr Gibbs places on a defense. Why Detroit ranks first, I don't think it's any surprise, but Gibbs is the division's best back, its most dangerous receiving weapon at the position, and the only one ranked among ESPN's top 2. Further from that, when you will deviate from this a little bit, when you take a look at the Lions roster and you look at what's behind Jahmyr Gibbs, I am overly confident in Isaiah Pacheco. As long as he stays healthy, I am overly confident that he is going to have a really good season. But even behind him, we saw a player in Jacob Sailors last year start to handle a lot of the receiving duties, in punt and kick return. In his ability, just running the football, his natural ability as a running back, and even the time that he had in preseason, and any of the time that he had, after that, and limited time that he had in any game time. This is very, very limited, I think, at running back. I don't even know if he had more than 5 carries on the season. But you can see the type of runner that he is. He just makes things happen. And the same can be said for Sione Vaki, who's also averaged over 5 yards a carry anytime he's gotten in a game. So I think what you have behind Jahmyr Gibbs between Isaiah Pacheco and Sailors and Sione Vaki, those are my 4 that are going to make the roster right now. That is a really good backfield. Like, really good backfield. We lost Montgomery, but I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to surprise a lot of people this year. But this is 1-for-1, man. Jahmyr Gibbs versus, Swift, Jones. I mean, there's no competition here. the Lions own the running back room. So let me know your thoughts in the comments and in the chat right now. Who owns the running back room in the NFC North? The third position that we'll talk about is the wide receiver position. So ranking Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay, and Chicago. Wide receiver rooms. Look, Detroit wins the receiver room. I mean, there's no comparison here for me. They win it through production. They win it through the complementary skill sets and the legitimate 3-deep upside that the Lions are going to show us this season. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he caught 117 passes last year, 1,401 yards, and 11 touchdowns. ESPN's 2026 Evaluator Survey ranked him 5th among NFL receivers. Jameson Williams followed with 65 catches, 1,117 yards, 7 touchdowns, averaging 17.2 yards per reception, the most in the league in 2025. And Williams received honorable mention in the same national survey. And they got this one right. So let me know in the comments below, did they get it right? Do you think that JMO was deserved of a top 10 rank in this year's Evaluator Survey? St. Brown and Williams, they create different problems. St. Brown attacks leverage, zone windows, contested areas, and high leverage downs. Williams, he forces safeties to protect the deep field, right? And creates space for everything underneath and all the underneath concepts. And then there's the emergence of Isaac Tesla. He changes the depth argument immediately for Detroit. He scored 6 touchdowns on only 16 recorded rookie receptions. That gives Detroit a 6'4" target with a catch radius, body control, and red zone value that I feel is unmatched at the third position in the wide receiver room for any room in the league. And then you have Greg Dortch. He adds quickness, returnability, and previous experience in Drew Petzing's system and offense. And, of course, did they forget about Jahmyr Gibbs? Well, he's not a receiver, but I had to throw him in here anyway. As I said earlier, if Jahmyr Gibbs was solely a slot receiver in 2026, I am confident enough in my evaluations to place him in the top 15 of all wide receivers in the league. I know that's a crazy statement. Maybe it's a hot take, but Gibbs finished with the 21st most catches in 2025 with 77 while carrying the rock 243 times. Imagine if they just put him as a slot receiver 95% of the time, how good he would really be. And I think that he would stack up against anybody. But that'll never happen. So it was just a little, afterthought that I had to throw in there. All right, Minnesota. They rank 2nd, and only because of Justin Jefferson, who remains one of the league's top 2 receivers. While Jordan Addison and Juwan Jennings give the Vikings a dangerous trio, Detroit gets the edge because it owns 2 consecutive 1,000-yard receivers, a high upside third option, and a very consistent quarterback solution and greater schematic diversity. Then there's Chicago. Rome Odunze, Luther Burden III, they possess considerable upside, but DJ Moore's departure removes that proven production. And then you have Green Bay. Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, just got a bag, right? Matthew Golden, second season, had a very, very, very underwhelming first year last year as a rookie. But they have talent, right? But they carry more health issues and week-to-week consistency problems and questions. They just don't sniff anywhere near the top of the NFC North wide receiver rooms. The reason why the Lions rank first, it's no surprise. They have the 2 nationally most respected receivers probably in the league, 2 different coverage stressors, an emerging third weapon, and the consistency of Jared Goff now for 3.5 seasons, leading the league or top 5 in almost every metric that matters. So that is 3 positions. That is 3 first place positions for the Detroit Lions on the offense, at quarterback, at running back, and receiver. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Next up, we're going to talk about the tight end position. All right, next up in today's index rankings, we have the tight end position ranking the NFC North. Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers, and the Minnesota Vikings. Look, Sam Laporta is the division's best individual tight end, and I don't think it's anywhere close. But Chicago narrowly takes the complete room. ESPN's Evaluator survey ranked Laporta fourth among NFL tight ends, and Tucker Kraft ranks sixth. Colston Loveland ranks seventh, and Cole Kmet received honorable mention. Laporta averaged 6.9 yards after the catch per reception and 2.25 yards after first contact before a back injury, ended his season after 9 games in 2025. Detroit has Laporta, Brock Wright, and Tyler Conklin. Wright brings blocking value and scheme familiarity, and Laporta's back injury is still a bit of an unknown to this point, which means Chicago, who pairs Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet, can create heavier formations that can still threaten the defense through the air, and both are healthy entering 2026. Loveland caught 58 passes for 713 yards and 6 touchdowns as a rookie, and Cole Kmet remains an established starter-level player, while the rookie, Sam Roush, someone who we absolutely loved in the spring games, can contribute as a blocker and special teams player. Green Bay ranks third because Kraft is a legitimate difference maker when healthy, but his, returning from an ACL tear, it may limit his production here in 2026. Minnesota remains dangerous, I guess, with TJ Hawkinson, but his production has lacked, heavily relying on the quarterback situation, and though its depth and recent production trail the other 3 rooms. So why Chicago ranks first? I think it's pretty simple. Laporta is the best individual, but Loveland and Kmet formed the division's strongest 2 tight end combination. Even if Sam Laporta was 100% healthy, I would still give the edge to Chicago. Let me know what you guys think about the tight end room. Does Chicago truly belong in number 1 because of the duo that they have? Or is Sam Laporta good enough to take it away? J-Mommy, you must have been listening to me a little bit, because that's what I've been thinking about the tight end position, man, for Tesla. Because when you look at our room, and again, I'm just let me just pause on this for a second, because what she just said is, I wonder if the Lions have any plans to use Tesla in the tight end position, and it's been weighing heavily on my mind too, because I look at this room, and here's what I see: Sam Laporta, back injury, don't know where he's at. Right, Brock Wright, he's never been a threat. He had that 156-yard touchdown like 3 years ago. And that, I could still hear Dan Miller in my ear. Brock Wright, Brock Wright, Brock Wright, right? You all know the play. We used to have it loaded up here. Used to play it all the time. But I look at this room, and it's like, okay, Sam Laporta, back injury, Brock Wright, he's a blocker. He's never really been a super, duper threat guy. Tyler Conklin, who actually brings some receiving ability, 500-plus yards, you would expect at least out of the guy. And then behind him, it's Zach Horton, right? Was it Gordon Thomas? I'm sorry, Thomas Gordon, Jackson Meeks potential, and Miles Kitselman. I do like Miles Kitselman. I think that he has shown a little bit, right? And we'll see what he's going to show in camp. But Jackson Meeks, the cross-pollination here of, former wide receiver, now moving into a potential tight end position, the Detroit Lions roster, according to our lads, list Jackson Meeks in the tight end room. So that tells you something. They have some information. He's only 6'2", but he weighs 235 pounds. And so this could be one of the best, absolute best uses of Jackson Meeks. He's a little bit shorter, but he has some range and he has some speed. He's a lot better speed than most tight ends. So this could be a surpriser for us here in camp, that Jackson Meeks could emerge to become the 3rd tight end in this room, if not the 4th tight end in this room. And if 13 personnel is going to be a real option for the Lions here in 2026, that's where Jackson Meeks maybe pushes the envelope for the Lions in certain situations, because he can line up as a tight end. He can kick back outside as a wide receiver or line up in the slot. You could bring him back behind the line and use him as a Deebo Samuel. Keep your eyes on Jackson Meeks this year. The going back to your statement on the Isaac Tesla thing, I really felt that since the Lions weren't really doing a whole lot in that room, we didn't know what was going on with Sam Laporta, that he would have made the easier transition to tight end because of his size. He was only about 12 to 15 pounds away from being in that tight end size. And he already has, the ability, right, to do everything. But keeping him as a wide receiver makes more sense. I still think that they're going to, line him up in the condensed formations or the tight formations. Makes him look or operate as a tight end, but he's really going to be running receiver routes. However, he could be taking some of the duties at times that maybe Sam Laporta runs on those seam routes, which are so deadly. I would love to see Tesla and Sam Laporta running those seam routes together. It doesn't matter, wide receiver or tight end, Tesla is going to have a great year. Jackson Meeks is the one to watch in camp. That's his way to that's his path to the roster. Let's just call it what it is. The only way Jackson Meeks is making this roster is in the tight end room. There's no other way. I think the Lions are going to go back to holding only 5 wide receivers this year, and they might bump up to 4 tight ends, and they kind of have to if they're going to run 13 personnel. Not because they need 4 on the field, but because they need backups. Right? You have to have guys that can do it. Otherwise, you lose a whole portion of your playbook. All right, next up, we're going to be talking about the offensive line in the NFC North. Index rankings by DFJ Sports, DetroitFootballJournal.com. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe today. You get a free 30-day trial, and would love to have you a part of the journey here this season. All right, tight end was taken by the Chicago Bears. Now we're going to move on to the offensive line, where you have a 2026 projection that I think for a lot of Lions fans, they're not confident in the offensive line. But outside the circles of the One Pride, I think that the national conversation is starting to pick up around what this offensive line could be in 2026. It's something that I said months ago when I started looking at, the players that we had on this team, especially the offensive line, that the minute that the Lions bring somebody in, with having players like Mahogany and Frazier that you've already taken in later rounds, and adding to the room, I was definitive in my forecast that this was going to be a room that was going to be, brought down to the final nail, right, of training camp. The final nail, to put up that final piece of cladding on this team was going to come from the offensive line. It is going to be one of the deepest offensive lines in the NFL. I know a lot of you don't believe so, but I promise you it will be. Based on what we've seen from some of these players already, the players that we've already had on this squad, and the players that they added. Brad Holmes did an excellent job. So let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Who owns the best overall offensive line out of the NFC North? For the 2026 projection, Detroit deserves the top spot. And I know a lot of you are like, whoa, there's no way, that's not possible. But this one, honestly, was maybe the toughest group to rank. The Lions don't simply have one dominant tackle, right? They have the NFL's best tackle, Penei Sewell. They have 2 ascending guards. They have a targeted center upgrade. And then they have a first-round right tackle and an experienced veteran insurance plan behind him that provides the deepest room in the NFL. And that's only talking about 6 players. What about the rest? Let's talk about Penei Sewell first. Penei Sewell earned a 95.2 overall efficiency mark, the best among all NFL offensive linemen. His 96.8 run blocking efficiency also led every offensive lineman, and he allowed pressure on only 3.3% of passing plays. He surrendered just 1 sack across 17 games and earned a first-team All-Pro honors for the 3rd consecutive season. The ESPN evaluator survey, ranked Sewell as football's #1 offensive tackle. He is the best individual offensive lineman anywhere in the division and anywhere in the NFL, and has a legitimate argument to be the best in football, and has been the best in football for a very long time. Moving Sewell to left tackle, it does more than protect Jared Goff's blind side. It allows Detroit to leave him isolated, right? Release a tight end into the route, or move protection towards Blake Miller, or assist an interior offensive lineman. You don't have to worry about the left side of the offensive line anymore. So for that, it was a great move by the Lions. It was one that was expected or projected. If they were going to bring in a right tackle, if they were going to bring in a left tackle, it may not have been the move that we were expecting. Christian Mahogany up next, and I know he brings a lot of debate among Lions fans, but Mahogany enters his third season after earning meaningful starting experience in 2025. He took nearly every first-team rep at left guard during the early offseason program here in 2026 and enters training camp as the projected starter. Detroit is not blindly projecting an inexperienced player here, though, either. Mahogany has already faced NFL defensive fronts, experienced protection breakdowns, and learned what his technique must become, and it must become more consistent. His power, movement fit, his power and movement fit the physical identity that Detroit wants to restore. The next step is sustaining his pad level and placement and recognition against interior games for an entire season. I think it's that hand placement that is going to be very important to Mahogany's growth here in 2026. And that's one of the things that I'll be looking at in camp. Having two former NFL starters in Juice Scruggs and Ben Bartch, and then with Giovanni Manu right behind, that's got to give Hank Fraley a pretty comfy feeling heading into training camp. Next up, let's talk about Cade Mays, the Lions center position. We're 2 seasons now removed from Frank Ragnow. That ship has sailed, but the Lions went out and targeted Mays to stabilize the center position. Mays has now started 20 games over the last 2 seasons without allowing a sack. He also has only surrendered 23 pressures and 6 quarterback hits across 803 pass blocking reps during that stretch. His 2.56% pressure rate ranked 11th among centers last season, while his 98.5 blocking grade or blocking efficiency grade tied for 9th among 35 qualifying players. At 6'6", 325 pounds, Mays can anchor the middle without restricting Detroit's movement-based rushing concepts, and his presence allows players like Tate Ratledge to remain at right guard rather than restarting his development at center. I think that's key, by the way, that not moving Tate Ratledge to center, that was very important not to happen. So I'm glad that Tate's staying at the guard position. So anyway, this represents a cleaner pass protection profile and a better physical fit than Detroit received from the position last season. No shade to Graham Glasgow. Like no shade at all to Graham. Like, Graham was great. And he deserves a lot of respect. But it just wasn't working last year with everything that was going on. I mean, that offensive line was really inundated with a lot of problems that stem from coaching. And whenever you have inconsistency and communication issues at the coaching level, I mean, your players are going to be all sorts of discombobulated, and that's what it looked like. And they're pros, right? They did the best job they could on the field. It just wasn't good enough. So they learned a lot last year. You know, last season's issues, I think, are going to compound into strengths here in 2026 for the Lions. Next up, we're going to talk about the second-year player, Tate Ratledge. Tate Ratledge expected second-year jump is supported by a very measurable rookie development or measurable amount of development in his rookie season. Better recognition and hand placement for him, it could produce one of Detroit's most improved players in 2026. He started all 17 games. He finished with a 73.5 run blocking efficiency mark, which ranked 12th, by the way, among all NFL guards and second among rookie guards. So that is tier 1 where he ranked as far as blocking grade. Ratledge did not allow a sack over his final 12 games and surrendered only 4 quarterback hits during that stretch. His pass protection still must improve. He finished with the season on 24 pressures and 1 sack allowed. The important point here is the trajectory. Ratledge settled down as the season progressed, something that you expect your rookies to do. He protected more consistently and already demonstrated upper-level run-blocking ability. Even with all the communication and lack of consistency issues for the Lions offense during the 2026 season, you can use a dozen adjectives to describe him as a player. Ratledge proved himself to be pliable, workable, teachable, reliable, available, and dominant in 2026. His outlook Should be a top 5 finish is my projection for all right guards. Pretty confident about Tate Ratledge. It was a great pickup by Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and the powers that be on the drafting board. I think you're going to see a huge jump from him this year. His level of confidence is going to raise. Having a rookie potentially next to him, it'd be interesting. But again, being on the right side is a little bit less concerning than on the left side. Now we're going to have Blake Miller, the rookie that I'm talking about. Miller is not a developmental lottery ticket. He's a developmental player like all players are. But Detroit selected him at 17th overall to compete immediately at the right tackle position. He started 54 consecutive games at Clemson. He set the school record with 3,778 offensive snaps and never missed a college game. Nearly 97% of those snaps came at right tackle. That experience, it gives Miller a cleaner path to early playing time for Detroit and the typical rookie tackle position that he'll be asked to cover. He has already encountered multiple fronts, pass rush styles, twists, pressure packages, and his NFL adjustment will center on handling professional power, shortening his recovery after losing initial leverage, and maintaining pad level against advanced rushers. Behind him, the 6th player on this offensive line, Larry Borom. Detroit has a credible, very credible protection plan if Miller does need a little bit more time. Borom enters with extensive starting experience and can play either tackle spot, and that gives the Lions a legitimate camp competition, an experienced bridge starter, and a dependable swing tackle if Miller does win the job. I don't know, it's pretty exciting when you think about the players that we have, the type of players that we have, and how they've already grown. I think that it gives credence to why I ranked the Lions offensive line at number 1. Now for the contenders. Chicago. They remains Detroit's closest challenger. Darnell Wright anchors the right tackle position, while Braxton Jones is positioned to handle the left side. Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson give the Bears 2 proven veteran guards, and then Garrett Bradbury supplies extensive starting experience at center, with the rookie Logan Jones developing behind him. Now, Ozzie Trapillo and Jedrick Willis provide additional tackle options if Chicago needs to adjust the lineup. The Bears may own the division's most experienced protective 5, but their ceiling really depends on the health and the immediate cohesion. Starting all anew again in Chicago it's not an easy place to be. But we'll see if they can have, luck strike twice 2 seasons in a row. And then you also have to remember that Ozzie Trapillo is coming back from a major injury. I think it was a patellar tendon, if memory serves me right. Minnesota does have a strong, or does remain strongest on the edges, with Christian Darrisaw at the left tackle position and Brian O'Neill at the right tackle position. Donovan Jackson and Blake Brandel and Will Freeze form the projected interior, but that group carries less proven continuity than Detroit or Chicago. The Vikings have high-end tackle talent, yet the center and guard combination must establish consistency before that unit can challenge for the division's top spot. Then there's Green Bay. Projected Jordan Morgan, Aaron Banks, Sean Ryan, Anthony Belton, and Zach Tom across its starting line. Tom remains the unit's established high-end player, but the Packers are asking several linemen to settle into new or expanded roles at the same time. Their ceiling is respectable, although the amount of change creates more uncertainty than Detroit, Chicago, or Minnesota combined. So that is why the Detroit Lions rank number 1, in my opinion. The Lions combine the division's best individual lineman in Penei Sewell with an ascending young starter and a targeted center upgrade and a first-round investment at right tackle. Chicago may offer more veteran experience, but Detroit owns the stronger combination of elite ceiling, developmental upside, and lineup flexibility. The one thing that I forgot to mention, coaching. Hank Fraley. All right, when we get back, we're going to talk about the defense. Who owns it? Who owns the defensive crown here in 2026? May surprise you what I'm thinking. Coming up next. All right, let's do a quick recap, and then I'm going to jump into the chat for just a moment. So far, we have gotten through the quarterback position, the running back position, the wide receiver position, tight end, and offensive line. And out of all of those, the Detroit Lions, in my opinion, for my composite ranking score, I have the Lions taking all of those but the tight end position, which has gone to Chicago. My composite grade, quarterback 92, Chicago 89, running back, Lions 96, Chicago 90, wide receiver, Lions 95, Minnesota 92, tight end, Chicago 94, Detroit right narrowly behind him at 93. Offensive line, the Lions at 92 and Chicago at 89. Offensive line, again, one more time, Detroit at 92, Chicago at 89. We're going to get into the defense coming up next. But before we do, I want to double back to the chat for just a moment. And I think it was Jim, where was that? Jim LeGros. He had a good question, good statement in here. And so, Jim, you're going to get the second nod of the morning. Here's his statement. He said, when did the proven depth show up? That line was often more than it was good. Christmas Day might be the worst. Oh, line play I've seen in 7 years. Or maybe that's supposed to be of line play that I've seen in 7 years. So we're going to give you the, well, I think this comment deserves this one.
Ball's loose on the ground.
You think the ball's loose for Detroit right now. You're maybe not so confident in the Lions' offensive line. But I'm going to take this one head on. I'm going to go to the archives. Detroit Lions depth chart. Okay, let's wind back. You said Christmas, so let's go back to 12/1 of 25. Courtesy of our lads. And the Lions' offensive line, of course, was Taylor Decker. He's no longer here. All right, Dan Skipper, he's no longer here. He's a coach. Coyote Owasika was starting at left guard. He's no longer here. And Tristan Colon was the backup left guard. He's no longer here. Graham Glasgow was our center. He's gone. Michael Neese, I think he's gone too. The holdovers, Tate Ratledge and Penei Sewell from that starting lineup in December are the only two that remain. So for that reason is why I'm looking at a huge change from last year to this year. The Lions got rid of all of the players that were causing us headaches. And maybe no fault to their own, but let's go to January 1st. Our starting offensive line January 1st was Taylor Decker, Christian Mahogany, Graham Glasgow, Tate Ratledge, Penei Sewell. And 2 out of those 5 are gone, right? 2 out of those 5 are gone. And so when you look at the level up that the Lions have where they've leveled up, let's look what's behind them. Dan Skipper, now you have Larry Borum, right? Miles Frazier, still here. Michael Neese is gone. Now you have Ben Barch and Juice Scruggs, right? And Giovanni Manu. I know no one's excited about Giovanni Manu. Tristan Colon, gone. Waska, gone. So this line is totally reshaped here in July of 2026. Now you're looking at an offensive line that is starting Penei Sewell, Christian Mahogany, Cade Mays, Tate Ratledge, and Blake Miller, at least right now. That's a much better top 5 than we had last year. And comparing it to Chicago, I think that we're going to have the edge for many reasons, but the most important is coaching and continuity of the offensive system. We're both replacing a center, but I think our center, Bradbury's a little bit older, right? Probably a little bit more experienced than Cade Mays, but Cade Mays has already proven that he can hold his own. But behind them, Giovanni Manu, Ben Barch, Juice Scruggs, Miles Frazier, Larry Borum, and then behind them in the third tier, you're looking at Kobe Sorsdahl and Michael Neese. I guess they're still here. Melvin Priestley, Mason Miller, who's a player to watch out for. And then my ultra dark horse to make the practice squad is Seth McLaughlin. Like, he still holds some extreme value being, what should have been the number 1 center taken in the draft a couple of years ago, but injuries decided that for him. So our third tier are, a couple of players that have held over, Kobe Sorsdahl and Michael Neese, and they won't be on this roster, right? They won't be on this roster this year. It's going to be all new besides some of the starters that have held over. So that is why I'm confident. Hopefully, I kind of answered your statement there, and I appreciate you dropping one in. Appreciate you dropping one in. All right, let's talking about the defense. Let's get rolling here. Defense really decides the crown, right? Is that what everyone's thinking? That's what I put. So we're going to start with the interior defensive line, and you're going to think I'm nuts, but, and we'll go through the. Here, let me pull a couple of these rosters open. We'll go through some of the rosters this morning. Damn, it's already 10 o'clock today. Already 10 o'clock. We're going to keep motoring, though. Started late. Do me a favor. Are you guys watching this from the vertical look, or are you watching it just from the standard look? Because it's supposed to be doing both. There's supposed to be a vertical look that is also included. All right, we got those open now. All right, let's start with the interior defensive line. Now, I have the Detroit Lions taking the interior defensive line through the combination of Aleem McNeil, Tyleik Williams, and the division's deepest collection of rotational players. That's right. I said it, and I'm going to say it again. The Detroit Lions have the best interior defensive line in the NFC North simply because of Aleem McNeil and Tyleik Williams, but also because of the largest collection of depth behind those two players, which would be Levi Onwuzurike. My goodness, if he can get back to playing his 2024 ways, I mean, he's a starter on just about any team out there if he stays healthy, right? Jay Tufele brings a lot of ability and experience, and he's a damn good football player. Mekhi Wingo, Skylar Gill-Howard, who's going to shock everybody this year. Chris Smith, and then Miles Adams. Miles Adams has played significant snaps for us. He's also a damn good football player. And then Aiden Kenyatta. So it is one of the deepest groups in the league. And if I were to say, based on what the Lions have done in seasons past, if they keep 6 this year, I wouldn't be surprised. I think the whole change, or the biggest change you're going to see, and I say it at least once or twice a week, hockey line shifts, right? You're not just going to be swapping out a player here or there. The Lions are going to bring in a new front four, and they're going to exit a new front four, or a front four. You might see Aiden, Tyleik, Aleem, DJ Wannaman, and then you might see Peyton Turner, Derek Moore, Levi Onwuzurike, and Aleem or Williams in. So they're swapping 3 out. They get a blow, they come in the next play. Now, if the defense decides to go up tempo, we trap players on the field. It is what it is. I'm pretty confident with the players that we have that they'll be able to do both, right, and handle run or pass situations. So the hockey line shifts and keeping these guys healthy. Skylar Gill-Howard, he's making this roster. I'm just unless something happens at camp, he's making the roster. All right, so here let's talk about McNeil. Look, he provides proven penetration ability, right, and pocket compression. Last year was a bit of an anomaly for him. He was coming back off of a major knee injury, and then he also injured his core. So I say it every year that when a player comes back from a major injury, you kind of have to throw it out the window. It's just a throwaway season for most players, simply because they're trying to overcome what they've just overcome. And to put those two things on the field together, it usually doesn't work out for probably 80+% of the players coming back from a major injury. And that was just his year, just to kind of get back. And it didn't look great all the time, but there were other issues on that defense that contributed. So while Williams, in this case, Tyleik Williams, enters his second season, he has the size and the power to become that full-time difference maker against the run. And the Lions have already talked about the fact that he's going to be the primary nose tackle in this defense. Levi Onwuzurike, he can play inside. He can reduce from a heavier end alignment. He can do it all. Mekhi Wingo, Jay Tufele, Skylar Gill-Howard, Chris Smith, Aiden Kenyatta. They all give Detroit several options for early down, penetrating, and developmental roles. Tyree West, can't forget about him, should not really be included here because I think that the Lions are more listing him, in another direction. If I look at their current roster on our lads, They have Tyree West right now as a left defensive end. So whether that holds true into camp, we'll find out here just in a couple of weeks. So the Lions have publicly identified, McNeil and Williams as their expected foundation and starters. That's no surprise. But how do they compare against the rest of the league, right? How do they compare? Well, Green Bay, I have them ranking second right now, obviously with Javon Hargrave and Devonta Wyatt, Chris McClellan, projected across its your primary three-base man front. Hargrave and Wyatt give the Packers their strongest interior pass rush combination. And then they have Nazir Stackhouse too, right? Let me pull it up. Yeah, they have Nazir Stackhouse, Jordan Riley, Jaden Crometti, rookie this year, and Jonathan Ford. And then also Carl Brooks. He was a 2023 sixth-round pick. So they bring some depth, right? But Javon Hargrave, in my opinion, is like the only guy that they really have on that offensive line. Now, they run a base 3-4, so it's a little bit different from a 4-3. When you kind of have to add in all of the other players for the Lions defensive line when I'm comparing it, because I can't just compare the nose tackle to the Lions front two, right? So I kind of have to compare all of it together. Chicago, look, they move ahead of Minnesota pretty easily in this one with Gravon Dexter, Grady Jarrett, Neville Gallimore, and Contavious Street. Let me pull them up real quick. They also have Daniel Hardy, John Marie Cromaw, James Lynch, Jaden Loving, and Jeremiah Martin. Some lesser-known players, Jordan Vandenberg. But they're front two or three players. They're pretty good players, but they're definitely ahead of Minnesota. And that really gives the Bears a more established veteran floor, if you will. Shamar Turner, he can also reduce inside at times and play defensive end when Chicago wants more length and movement in passing situations. Lastly is Minnesota. Look, they have an intriguing upside, but the least proven interior, first-round rookie Caleb Banks, coming off, a couple of major, foot issues, and then hurt it again, I think right after, before, or during the combine, ended up having another surgery, so he'll have to get back from that. Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake, Rodriguez, Dominique Orange, Isaiah Loudermilk, Eric Johnson II, Taki Taimani. So they very interesting collection of players, but nobody that's really, in my opinion, dominant. We don't know who Caleb Banks is going to be just yet. Levi Drake Rodriguez is marginally good. And then Jalen Redmond's pretty good. I like Jalen Redmond. He's pretty damn good defensive tackle. But why the Lions rank first? Look, I think it's a no-brainer here. And maybe y'all think I'm nuts. But McNeil and Williams provide the best starting foundation. And McNeil has been a top 10 in his time. He's been a top 15 in his time. But it's the immediate backup behind them with Levi Onwuzurike. I know that he's really battled a lot of injuries, but man, when this guy is healthy and he's playing, he is one of the better players in the game. And he can do a lot for this team. He can go outside, right? Come back inside. He can do a lot. I think it provides the best foundation between Williams and McNeil, and it's not even close. But you also have to factor in the rest of the defensive front, and we'll get into that next. But while Onwuzurike, Wingo, Tufele, and the younger developmental tackles give Detroit the division's widest range of rotational options, and I think that's what it's all about. If you compare the rotation, because it's not just the starters, you have to look what's behind them too in this index. I'm comparing everything. Who has the best backups when someone gets injured? And in my opinion, the Lions have the best collection of players, either with experience or high upside potential that really settles that room for me. Let me know what you think about the Lions' interior defensive line, and how would you rank the NFC North? I have it, Detroit Lions at number 1. I'm sorry, Green Bay at number 1. Detroit Lions at number 1, Green Bay at number 2, Chicago at number 3, Minnesota at number 4. Next up, edge rusher. Probably the most widely talked about, hotly debated topic among all NFL circles, but especially in Detroit with the One Pride. Brad Holmes finally gave Lions fans, gave the city of Detroit, whatever you want to call it, another edge. right? Been a very debatable conversation for a long time. I don't think it's going to do much different for us. It's not going to win us the Super Bowl. Everyone has to do their job. But Aiden Hutchinson, in this instance, gives Detroit the healthiest elite centerpiece entering camp. And I think that's the biggest defining, ranking or portion of the ranking for me is who was healthy going into camp. And where do the Lions look from top to bottom compared to everybody else? And Aiden is, by and large, a top 5 defensive end in the league, and he is the healthiest among all in the NFC North and the best among all in the NFC North. And when Micah Parsons comes back, and if he's able to play to the level that he was playing last year, well, then things could change a little bit. But for right now, Aiden Hutchinson, he produced 14.5 sacks, 100 pressures, 35 quarterback hits, and forced 4 fumbles in 2025. Detroit can now support him with DJ Wanham, Peyton Turner, second-round rookie Derek Moore, Tyree West, Ahmed Hassanin, Anthony Lucas, Eric O'Neill, and others, right? Wanham provides veteran production. Turner supplies size and former first-round traits. And Derek Moore gives Detroit a very young rusher capable of benefiting immediately from protections tilted towards Aiden Hutchinson, just like everybody else should, and just like everyone else has been doing for the last 4 seasons. Green Bay owns the division's highest-ranked individual pass rusher in Micah Parsons, but, as I mentioned earlier, his availability keeps the Packers in second place. Parsons is recovering from reconstructive ACL surgery that also included meniscus work. Green Bay's stated 9-month timetable points toward a possible late September practice return and beginning the season on PUP, which would require him to miss at least the first 4 games. Luca Van Ness, Brendan Cox Jr., Danny Dennis-Sutton, Aaron Mosby, Baron Sorrell, and Colin Oliver must maintain the rush until Parsons returns. Rashawn Gary is no longer part of the room after Green Bay traded him to Dallas. Chicago, at the number 3 spot, has Montez Sweat, leading a deeper supporting group that includes Austin Booker, Deo Odebeingo, Daniel Hardy, Jamari Croma, and Shamar Turner. The Bears have several credible complementary pieces, but no second proven player currently operating at Hutchinson's or Parsons' level. Minnesota, they traded Jonathan Greenard to Philadelphia and now builds around Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Bo Richter, and Shaz Chambliss, and the younger outside linebackers provide depth, but Turner must take a major step forward for the Vikings to replace Greenard's production. I think this one's simple to me. Parsons may have the highest individual ceiling, but Hutchinson combines that elite production with immediate availability, and Detroit has the deepest collection of credible complementary rushers. Now, I know, again, this is a lot like the offensive line. A lot of new faces, a lot of new bodies, and for a lot of fans, they don't know who these players are. And what they've heard from them, they've heard from your collection of local content creators, maybe some local media outlets that really don't do a whole lot but just throw people underneath the bus and don't give you credible, viable information about these players. And so unless you take the time to research them, them yourself, it's pretty hard to get a good gauge on who these players are going to be. I've gone through the majority of everybody's tape, maybe not as much as I really want to go through and as much time as I wanted to spend, but I'm extremely, extremely excited about Peyton Turner. As someone that has the elite measurables that he does, and going back to watch, the rookie film leading up to his draft, Peyton Turner, I mean, he could have easily become one of the best defensive ends in the league. It just didn't work out, whether it was coaching, whether it was the rest of the defense, or his own injuries, which were plenty, that kind of sidelined him. But if that player stays healthy this year, this is not the same as, the other situations that we've had with Marcus Davenport, but he's an exact copy of a Marcus Davenport style of football player. Someone that can set a hard edge. Someone that does have extremely long arms and a big wingspan that can get after the quarterback and handle the run game. I'm excited to see where he grows this year. But players in front of him like DJ Wanham, these are plug and play starters that can provide you with a very solid a pairing with Aiden Hutchinson, and then even the players behind them like Derek Moore. Derek Moore, he has a long way to go. His spring wasn't great, but now the pads come on and it's time to get to work. So I think for just those 3 reasons or 4 reasons, really, the Lions have the deepest group and they have the best overall player that is healthy at this time. The Lions take the edge position. So when you combine the edge and the interior defensive line, overall, there is no reason why the Lions don't have the best defensive front 4, right? Or front 7, we'll get there in a minute, in the league. In the NFC North. And even into the league, the Lions might be a top 5, if not better, by the end of the season. It all requires and hinges one thing to happen. Just one. And that is availability. They have to stay on the field. They have to stay healthy. They have to be available. And if that changes this year for the first time in eons in Detroit, I think that the Lions can do some extremely damaging things to offenses this year. So interior defensive line and the edge position clearly belong to the Detroit Lions. All right, next up, we're going to talk about the linebacker group. This is a group that, obviously it has, in my opinion, the best linebacker in football, Jack Campbell. He gives Detroit the division's strongest centerpiece of all the off-ball linebackers, in my opinion. Campbell recorded 176 tackles. 176 tackles last year. That's just nuts, right? 9 TFLs, 5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. Derek Barnes, matter of fact, he even had an interception last year, didn't he? I think he did. But anyway, Derek Barnes remains the primary Sam, while Malcolm Rodriguez enters camp as the leading Will candidate. And then there's the rookie, Jimmy Rolder, and the veteran, Damone Clark, are the main challengers, with Trevor Nowaski, Joe Bocci, and Eric Hunter providing additional depth and special teams value. Detroit's official camp preview confirms that Campbell at the Mike, Barnes at the Sam, and really an open competition at the Will. Well, we'll see where it goes, but I think that the Lions may have the best linebacker group out of the NFC North. And it might not even be close, by the way. Green Bay, they are close to a degree. Edgerrin Cooper, one of the most dominant linebackers in the game already. Zaire Franklin also can be one of the most dominant linebackers in the game. They form the projected starting pair for Green Bay. Isaiah McDuffie comes down and plays linebacker, right? Tyron Harper, Christian Welch, Nick Neerman, and rookie TJ Quinn give the Packers a deeper veteran rotation than the earlier version acknowledged. The interesting thing about Isaiah McDuffie for Green Bay is he may be one of the most fluid linebackers in the league, former safety. Now he's come down to play linebacker, and he's a little bit on the smaller side. He's right around 6'1", probably 220-ish in that range, but he was a 2-year starter in Buffalo. He started out as a safety before moving to a stack linebacker role in 2018. He's a high motor, athletic player, and look, he kind of gives that team an edge, in my opinion. And the depth really behind the 2 starters is pretty solid. When you have Isaiah McDuffie and Tyron Hopper behind Zaire Franklin and Edgerrin Cooper, I mean, what more do you really want out of a room? The Packers have a very deep rotation, and in the earlier version, like I said, that they had last year, this room, in my opinion, could be one of the best in the NFC North by the end of the season. But I think that's going to heavily depend on what happens up front. Because if they're kind of left on an island, then it's pretty tough for the linebacker core to have a good season if they don't have anything good in front of them. It all weights heavily on Micah Parsons. Minnesota, they move ahead of Chicago because Blake Cashman, Eric Wilson, Ivan Pace Jr., probably one of the best in the league, give the Vikings 3 experienced options. right? They have a rookie in Jake Golday, who's going to be extremely fun to watch. Jacob Roberts and Kamara Barnagali, I think is how you say his last name, and a developmental depth piece, while Brian Flores can use the group aggressively behind his pressure fronts. And then there's Chicago. Has dependable veterans, TJ Edwards, right? Devin Bush, DeMarco Jackson, Noah Sewell, one of the better ones in the league, Noah Sewell, Keyshawn Elliott, John Radigan behind all them. The Bears have usable depth, but they lack an individual player ranked at Jack Campbell's or even Edgerrin Cooper's level. So again, this is why the Lions finished first, and it was close, right? Detroit at 90, Green Bay at 88, Minnesota 82, and then Chicago all the way down into the 70s at 78. But Jack Campbell, man, he's the division's best off-ball linebacker. Barnes fits the physical structure of the defense. He's been playing with the Lions now for more than 4 seasons, and Detroit has 3 legit candidates for the open will position. And I think that when you combine that with everything else that's going on in this offense, I probably should have slid Green Bay to number 1. I may have to make an adjustment here. I'm banking on Rodriguez's, tenure in the NFL. And look, he's a damn good football player. I'm just hoping that he can cover this year. I have no issues with Malcolm Rodriguez in the run game. I'm more worried about what he's going to do in the pass game. It's a different style of a defense between what the Packers and the Lions run. It's kind of hard to compare there, but you can just replace Malcolm Rodriguez, what he does with Jack Campbell, right? Just having Jack Campbell in the middle, that does way more than what most groups are going to have between 2 guys. So for that reason, Detroit just barely edges out Green Bay 90 overall. Agree, disagree, let me know in the comments below. And then you're right. John Desage says Anthony Lucas is going to surprise everyone. Could. And then I look at Eric Hunter, man. So Eric Hunter, to me, look, he has that ability to be a showpiece in Detroit. And a showpiece he may be. I think Eric Hunter, also former safety. If I'm not mistaken. It comes from HBCU, Morgan State. 6'2", 220 pounds. Very similar. Very, very, very similar to Isaiah McDuffie. So from a size, length perspective, he's got really good length. Has really, really good length. He was a finalist for the Buck Buchanan Award as the FCS top defender. He led the team with 75 tackles in 2023, 2 forced fumbles. Missed most of his season in 24 due to injury. And then in 2025, he was an HBCU All-American, first-team All-MEAC. He led the team with 102 tackles, tied for the team lead with 14 TFLs, 3 forced fumbles, started all 12 games. 4 sacks, interception, 3 PBUs, and also played safety. Right? Crazy. Just crazy. But he has the size, man, of a defensive lineman, 6'7" wingspan. He can sidestep, lead blocks, or take them on with good aggression. His length really allows him a margin for error as a tackler. He's experienced in special teams coverage, and I think that's where he ends up on the roster, initially. But Eric Hunter, I like him a little bit more than Lucas, but I think both those guys will find their way onto a roster at some point. So for the linebacker room, again, it's the Lions at number 1 at 90, Green Bay at 88. Honestly, it could be a tie simply because, our will position is a little bit weak, but I think that Jack Campbell settles the rest. Cornerback room. This was kind of tough. This was kind of tough for Detroit. Not even going to lie, this is a tough one. But let's rank them out, man. Cornerback remains Detroit's lowest ranked position group here in 2026. And they're going to have to fix that, especially with what's going on in the safety room coming up next. Chicago owns the most established overall combination. They have Jalen Johnson, who remains the lead outside corner. Tyreek Stevenson starts opposite of him. And then there's Kyler Gordon, who handles the nickel role. Terrell Smith, Josh Blackwell, Dallas Flowers, and the younger defensive backs really provide enough depth to survive an injury without completely changing the coverage structure. Minnesota follows with Isaiah Rodgers at right corner, James Pierce positioned to play opposite side, and then there's Byron Murphy operating primarily from the nickel. Dwight McLaughlin, who someone that we really wanted in Detroit last year, didn't happen. Charles Demings, Zamiah Vaughn, and the rookie depth give Brian Flores several aggressive options and schematic compatible options in 2026. And then there's Detroit. Detroit has a proven first corner in DJ Reed, but a very unresolved competition opposite at the other side. Rock Ya-Sin, Ennis Rakestraw are the primary outside candidates, but Roger McCreary and the rookie Keith Abney are better positioned for the nickel competition, but they do possess inside-outside versatility. So I think that you have a four-way fight early in camp. It's going to slim to three, probably within a couple of days, and then the last two are going to carry the rest of camp. Khalil Dorsey, Deshaun Tucker at depth. Ya-Sin allowed a 51.9% completion rate and a 72.6 passer rate when targeted in 2025. He played exceptionally well. But Rakestraw, he's the gamble. He has to prove that he can remain available. And until he does, I really can't count Rakestraw to do anything right now. Green Bay enters with Keeson Nixon, Carrington Valentine, and Benjamin St-Juste as their primary outside options, while Javon Bullard is listed at nickel. You have Devontae Jackson, Jonathan Baldwin II, Jalen Simpson, and the younger corners offer competition, but the Packers do not have a clearly established number one corner comparable to a Johnson or a Reed. So Chicago ranks first, and I think it's pretty clear that the Bears have the clearest outside pairing, an established nickel, and the fewest unanswered questions at the top of the depth chart. When you take a look at the NFC North position rankings on this year's index, I have Chicago at 88, Minnesota at 86, Detroit all the way down at 79, and Green Bay right beside them at 77. Let me know what you think in the comments below about the Lions cornerback room. And is there anyone that you're looking for that the Lions could add, should add, might add, after cuts? I've heard some grumblings that Kyler Gordon from Chicago may have a rough time making this roster. I don't see him as an outside corner. But is that someone, with his experience that you would want to add to this room if he was available? I'm not necessarily inclined to think so, especially if you don't have the outside corner ability, but he does have a lot of experience. All right, next up, we're going to get into safety room, and Raw B. You're 100% wrong. So, Robbie, you're going to get the third one of the day. You're going to get the third one of the day. And we'll talk about that one.
You sound insane. Do you realize that?
There we go. I think that's a good one. When I don't agree, that's probably what you're going to hear. So, Robbie says, for the same reason you like Hunter is the same reason you didn't like Gentry. Now, I think you all remember that I said definitively Gentry was not going to be drafted by the Detroit Lions. He didn't make any sense, and a lot of the NFL scouts agreed with me. And here's why. Let me pull up my take back on Eric Gentry, who, by the way, went undrafted as a rookie linebacker, who was later then signed by the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me pull it up, and I'll tell you exactly why. I just got to get back to my take on him. So there's a big difference between Eric Hunter and Gentry. And I think the point that you're missing, Robbie, is it's not the wingspan. I will never, ever, 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 ever not like a player because of their wingspan. Matter of fact, everybody that knows me knows that that's what I talk about the most. Ape index, long arms, it is a requisite for me. The difference between Gentry and Hunter is wide, right? And here's what it is. Hunter is only 6'2". Okay, so shorter to the ground, not super long legs, right? Gentry is like 6'6". Matter of fact, he's 6'6" and 5/8 inches. So he's 4.5 inches taller than Eric Hunter. Very tall legs, right? Tall legs. And when you have tall legs, it's very tough to flip and run. And so when you're stuck to the ground and you can't move because your legs are too long and it takes you a long time to get going, that's exactly why I didn't like Eric Gentry or Gentry. Eric Gentry. It wasn't because of wingspan. Not at all. You can never not have enough wingspan. So two totally different players, two totally different skill sets. And Eric Hunter was a safety before he was ever a linebacker. And he can still play safety today if he needed to. So you got that one wrong, buddy. It had nothing to do with wingspan. It had everything to do with the height and the lack of agility that Gentry had. Lack of agility. Thanks for playing. All right, let's move on to the safety room. Again, this is one where my biased, unbiased might be called out here, but it's okay. The Detroit Lions, they own the NFC North's best safety talent and its deepest contingency plans. Or do they? Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, both ranked among ESPN's top 10. Now, that's giving Detroit the only two players as top 10 safeties in the same division or throughout the NFL in this ranking, right? Joseph supplies the deep range and the takeaway production, while Branch can play safety, nickel, overhang defender, blitzer, and run fitter without revealing the coverage before the snap. There's just not another Brian Branch. Their availability remains the central concern. Now, Branch continues rehab and rehabbing a torn Achilles, while Joseph's knee must respond to a full training camp workload. Chuck Clark and Christian Izien receive the majority of all first-team reps in the offseason work. Thomas Harper started 9 games last season, and Avonte Maddox can contribute at safety or nickel. Dan Jackson and Lawrence Strickland complete a much deeper room than Detroit carried into the previous season, and I think that looms large going into my ranking, and I'll explain at the end. Green Bay, they deserve the second place spot here in 2026 with Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams. McKinney is the division's highest-ranked individual safety, while Williams gives the Packers a productive ascending partner. And then you have Kitten, Oladapo, and Mark Perry that provide the primary depth. Chicago follows with Kobe Bryant, one of my favorite players, coming out of the draft a couple of seasons ago. And then you have rookie Dylan Thieneman. A lot of unknowns, but if Thieneman can hit the ground running and just be a shell of himself that he was in college with Oregon, well, it's going to be a pretty special room in Chicago. Elijah Hicks, Cam Lewis also fill out that room. Bryant supplies experience and ball production, while Thieneman gives the Bears a high upside developmental starter and someone with a lot of range. Minnesota, they come in at 4th place. They have versatility through Joshua Metellus, but less established high-end talent behind him. Jay Ward, Theo Jackson, Jacoby Thomas, Jacob Thomas, and Tavier Thomas form a flexible group. Did I get all those Thomases right? Did I screw it up? Let's find out. Free safety, you've got Jay Ward, Theo Jackson, Tavier Thomas, Marcus Allen, Tyreek Chappelle at nickel, Halisi at nickel, Byron Murphy at nickel, Dwight McClawthorn. I'm sorry, I think I'm on the wrong team. No, I'm on the right team. I got it all wrong. Let me go back. Josh Metellus, Jacoby Thomas, Jacob Thomas, Tavier Thomas, Theo Jackson, and Jay Ward are your free safeties and strong safeties. So I had it right. So anyway, Minnesota's versatility through Joshua Metellus, but less established, high-end talent behind them, like I was saying. Jay Ward, Theo Jackson, Jacoby Thomas, Jacob Thomas, and Tavier Thomas all form a very flexible group. Although the Vikings do not have a safety carrying the same national recognition as Detroit or Green Bay's top players, it's still a formidable group. Why the Lions rank first? Well, there's no other NFC North team that can match Bryant's or Joseph's combined ceiling. Clark and Izzy and Harper, Maddox give Detroit the division's strongest insurance plan. I know, again, some of you don't think so, and that's okay. Let me know below why you don't think so. Green Bay, however, owns the better week one availability outlook, but I still have Detroit at number one, and I'm going to make my argument here. Here's my argument. Very simply, last year, Kirby Joseph goes down and disappeared after week 6, right? Avonte Maddox, who did not play post safety ever before in his career, played post safety and did a bang up job. Thomas Harper, when he came in and played, did a bang up job. I think he carried 9 games last year. Well, I'm just trying to find the number. Yeah, I think it was 9 games last year. He started 9 games. And so when you look at who they brought in, Chuck Clark, what he did early in preseason this year and what he's done at Pittsburgh, I'm not worried one bit about the safety room with Chuck Clark starting. Christian Izien, I'm a little skeptical of, but as a strong safety. But we still have Thomas Harper and Avonte Maddox that can fight for those spots. And I think that when you look at the top 6 players on this roster, that goes Branch and Joseph, and then behind them Chuck Clark, Izien, Harper, and Maddox, it's those 4 behind them that you can't find in any other roster in the NFC North. You can't find 4 complementary players like those 4 that can step in, day one and become a starter that they've already been. They've already played a lot of games. They already know the system. And for that reason, the Lions are number 1. When and if Kirby Joseph comes back and when Brian Branch comes back, there is no shadow of a doubt where the number 1 safety group is, not just in the NFC North, but in the entire NFL. There's not another team that has 6 players with the type of experience and ability that the Lions have here in 2026. So let's run it down, and we'll do special teams last. The Lions, I have them ranking first out of every single positional group in the NFC North, outside of tight end and corner. And that means the Lions hold the top spot in the special teams department as well. And that's where we're going to finish today's rankings. The Detroit Lions retain the top spot because of the strength of its specialists and the amount of roster capital devoted to the coverage units. Jack Fox recorded a 42.8 net punting average, placed 28 punts inside the 20, and produced only 2 touchbacks. Jake Bates, he scored 135 points last season, giving Detroit a very strong leg and very strong talent with that leg, right? Significant scoring volume. Hogan Hatton returns as a long snapper. And then you have Jack Campbell, Sione Vaki, Trevor Nowaski, and several other reserve linebackers and defensive backs that provide established coverage unit value. But then you have to look at the guys that the Lions brought in this year and some of these rookies that are definitely going to get a shot on special teams. Players that could make the roster, like Eric Hunter, Ahmed Hassani, Skylar Gill-Howard, loves to play special teams. Avonte Maddox, Thomas Harper. 2 players that will be paramount in special teams. Roger McCreary loves to play special teams. All of our starters that want to play special teams will get a shot at it. But this special teams group got a lot better with just one name. Out of everybody else that we have, there's just one name that I'm really looking forward to, and that is Jimmy Rolder. Jimmy Rolder on special teams is going to do some special things this year. So I'm really excited to see where he develops this season. And then Keith Abney is right behind him as another player on special teams that I'm excited to see. So, again, there's no comparison between the special teams groups. So out of quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, interior defensive line, edge rusher, linebacker, cornerback, safety, and special teams. The Detroit Lions own all but two position groups. Cornerback and tight end are the only ones that they're relinquishing, and that is until the Lions make some moves, and if the Lions make some moves this season. The next part of today's rankings, we're going to talk about rookies and the injury swings and why that stuff is so important into what this index is and how I put it together. All right, I want to talk about the rookies and the injury swings that really weighed heavily into this, 10% injury, probably even a lesser extent of the rookies combined. But I do believe that both of those conversations are critical into how you go through and rank not just a player, but an overall room, a team, in each division. And there's no reason why the Lions can't take the NFC North this year. Like Chicago doesn't own anything right now. They don't own the NFC North anymore. This is a new season, and it's time for the Lions to go take it back. The NFC North rookie class, it could really alter several key positions, I think, and the position rankings as we get through camp, and even then again before the season ends. Detroit's rookie class directly addressed four of the roster's clearest pressure points. Blake Miller, entering with 54 consecutive starts and a legitimate opportunity to win the right tackle job outright before week one. Derek Moore joins a very deep edge rotation rather than being forced to carry the pass rush immediately. Jimmy Rolder, right? He can earn a game day role through special teams. Like I was just saying, I'm super excited to see that man on the field while also competing for work at the will linebacker position. And I do see more situationally aware opportunities for these players to play. And when I say situationally aware, that is where, Kelvin Shepard is going to have these players have a role on the defense during certain portions of the game, down and distance, whatever it is, right? Whatever they're trying to accomplish. Keith Abney, the second, has a realistic path to sub-package snaps because Detroit's nickel and cornerback competitions still remain unsettled, but I also see him being utilized in the dime, the dime looks, all the sub-package looks, but the dime looks, and especially because the Lions are rumored to be doing more zone this year, you're going to have more DBs on the field. The NFC North Rookie Impact Board. That's right. I did a ranking for this too. But you have Blake Miller, expected role, starting right tackle, right? It's competition right now. Potential year one impact could validate Detroit's number one line ranking. And then you have Derek Moore, rotational edge. He could punish protection tilted toward Hutchinson. Jimmy Rolder, will and special teams. Immediate four-phase special teams path. Keith Abney the second, nickel and cornerback depth. Could earn sub-package work in the unsettled room. For Chicago, Dylan Thieneman, starting safety candidate, must help replace the veteran safety production. Logan Jones, for Chicago, center competition. He's not going to win it, but he could challenge Bradbury during camp. I don't think Bradbury's going to let that one go. He's too good. Green Bay's Dennis Sutton, edge rotation, immediate snaps while Parsons is still rehabilitating. So he's going to enter the fold right away. And how he plays, remember what I said about him. His immediate impact on the field is going to be run against the run. The pass rush for Dennis Sutton is also there, but it still has a ways to go. Green Bay's Yeager Burton, interior offensive line competition. He could push for early starting work. All these positions and all these players, all these rookies can change the dynamic of a team. And we've seen what that has done to the Lions like in 2023, where we had four players. I mean, they just dominated at their position as rookies. Minnesota's Caleb Banks, right? Rotational, or is he a starting defensive lineman? Highest defensive ceiling if his foot responds. And then Jacoby Thomas for Minnesota, safety competition. Could take significant snaps if Harrison Smith does not return. And I think Harrison Smith already said that he was going to retire. I was having trouble finding No, he's still undecided. So if he decides to retire, then he's going to get a shot. Availability remains the largest variable, right? Capable of changing the final rankings. We know that. And availability is probably the most important variable in winning football games. So Detroit carries the division's greatest safety uncertainty. Brian Branch continues to rehab that Achilles. Could be, start the season on PUP. I thought that they changed the rules on PUP, and maybe I have that wrong. I'll brush this up later on today. Kirby Joseph's knee, all right, again, has to withstand a full training camp workload before he's even going to be mentioned on the field. And then Detroit also added experienced depth, right? But neither Chuck Clark or Christian Izien can completely, replicate or reproduce what Branch and Joseph provide when they're healthy. I mean, there's just no answer to that. Green Bay, they carry the division's most consequential and individual defensive risk through Micah Parsons. His rehab and that timetable points toward a possible late September return to practice, and placement on regular season PUP would require him to miss at least the first 4 games, as I understand the rule today. Tucker Kraft and Zach Tom have all also been dealing with rehabilitating knee injuries. So although Green Bay has targeted training camp returns for both players, it's still, kind of undecided until camp begins, right? Chicago's concern is tackle depth. Rather than an automatic starting vacancy, Braxton Jones is listed first at left tackle on the roster sheet, and then Ozzie Trapillo's patellar tendon injury is expected to cost him most of the season. So it's more than likely he's done for the year. That removes one of Chicago's most experienced alternates and reduces the Bears' margin of error. If Jones struggles or misses time, that could be a major problem for them on the offensive line. Minnesota, they need Caleb Banks healthy because its defensive front is already relying heavily on young players. Banks missed spring practices while recovering from that left foot surgery, and the Vikings have remained hopeful that he can transition into training camp. His availability could really determine whether Minnesota's defensive line develops into a strength or remains one of the division's least proven groups. Those risks must be stated clearly. They should not be used to pretend that Branch, Joseph, Parsons, or any other injured player suddenly possesses less ability. I think that the health changes the probability of the contribution. It does not erase the demonstrated talent that they all possess. When you look at the NFC North injury and availability board on DetroitFootballJournal.com, this will be posted in there. The annual NFC index rankings for the NFC North. All right, so the NFC North position war. Look, it belongs to Detroit on paper because the Lions possess the division's, broadest collection of nationally recognized difference makers. And it's very easy. Like it's light work, right? Jared Goff ranks ahead of every other division quarterback. Jahmyr Gibbs, the NFL's number 2 running back, I would say he's probably number 1 in my book. Amon-Ra St. Brown, top 5 receiver. He can be a top 3 at times. Penei Sewell, the best overall tackle on the field. I don't care what team. Aiden Hutchinson and Jack Campbell, they rank 5th at their positions. And they play like number 1s at times. But players like Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, they remain inside the top 10 at safety even though they're injured. It's not an empty preseason hype to believe that the Lions have the best roster of the NFC North. It's not just hype to believe the Lions have probably one of the best rosters completely in the NFL. It's an external recognition that is supported by production and by the evaluations from all the executives, the coaches, the scouts across the league that recognize this is more than hype. It's legit. The concern is whether Detroit's high-end talent can carry the uncertain portions of the roster. Miller has to adjust quickly, enough to stabilize the right tackle position right away. The competition opposite of DJ Reed must produce a dependable starting, left corner. Branch and Joseph must be allowed to recover without being rushed. That would be a mistake. The interior offensive line must become more connected and consistent enough to prevent pressure from collapsing Jared Goff's pocket. Chicago, they still remain Detroit's greatest, immediate challenger because its roster combines veteran offensive line experience with the division's strongest tight end and cornerback rooms. Green Bay's defensive ceiling rises significantly once Parsons is cleared to return. Thankfully for the Lions, you probably won't see him until the end of the season. Minnesota remains capable of changing games because Justin Jefferson can dictate coverage, and Brian Flores can create pressure through scheme, even in a phone booth, right? Detroit, therefore, owns the strongest overall ceiling, but it does not own the division by default. Not just yet. Detroit owns the NFC North's strongest overall roster ceiling. Chicago owns the division's best overall cornerback and tight end rooms. Green Bay owns elite defensive star power, but they carry major availability concerns. Minnesota, they don't own anything. They remain dangerous despite having fewer nationally recognized players. Health, not talent, is Detroit's greatest obstacle. And that is an understatement. Does Detroit have the NFC North's best roster, or must the Lions reclaim the division before earning that title? Leave your rankings in the comments. I would love to know what you guys think.